Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 4 of the News Desk. Here with me, Chris Stafford and Nancy Gillen in London. And we're recording this on January 25th. Nancy, it's been a fantastic week of sport all round, really. Some exciting things happening, not least in tennis, in football, and in skiing, of course, winter sports. We're just over a week, haven't we, to the start of the Winter Olympic Games. So it really is boiling now in Olympic sport, in winter sports, because a lot of the teams have actually left for Beijing, haven't they?
Yeah, it's really kind of, I think Team GB have announced the athletes going, and yeah, it's, I can't quite believe it's only a week and a bit away, seeing as, you know, the Tokyo Olympics seems like yesterday, but yeah, looking forward to watching some winter sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And our friend Peggy Shin, you know, who writes for the USA Olympic Committee, she's left. She's gone for a month. She had her reservations. I talked to her a few days ago, and she was very concerned about it all, because I don't think it's going to be an easy Olympics to cover by any means, is it?
No, it definitely not. Obviously everyone was aware for Tokyo, kind of the restrictions that were in place for athletes and for journalists as well, and the testing regime and kind of the risk of being isolated in your room if you tested positive. And I think China is the same, if not kind of more strict with the rules and isolation and kind of where you can go and where you can't. So again, I think very difficult circumstances to report from. And yeah, I can't say I envy too much the people that are out there. Obviously, it'd be an incredible experience, but yeah, like I said, very difficult circumstances.
It certainly is, but we will be following that, of course, very closely over the next few weeks here at With Sports. Now, we will come to the World Cup skiing results, the most recent from this past weekend and from today, actually, in just a moment. But I do want to make headlines with the Rugby Sevens, Nancy, because there was a Rugby Sevens, HSBC Rugby Sevens tournament in Spain this past weekend, one of two weekends where teams from all over the world will be competing. And I have to give a big shout out to Naya and Ilona Maher. Of course, they are the co-hosts of the Leo's Den podcast here at With Sports, and Naya is one of our ambassadors. They had an amazing tournament, and the US actually won gold. It was a very, very, very thrilling competition. It was really high-quality play, Nancy. I mean, extraordinary high quality. And, of course, with the sevens, things happen very, very quickly, don't they? I mean, you can be 2 tries up, or 3 tries up, and before you know it, boom, the game's over.
Yeah, I think, well, personally, it's probably my favourite format of rugby, just because it, like you said, it is so fast-paced and exciting, and yeah, can completely change. The scoreline can change. So, yeah, it's definitely, if anyone hasn't watched it, I do recommend it.
Yeah, most definitely. There's lots of links, of course, on social media, and not least of all on USA Rugby on their channel. Now, I do want, as I say, give a shout out to Naya and Ilona, because they celebrated those standout performances. Naya, during the tournament, became the top try scorer in US Rugby, and Lowe won the Player of the Final award, which is the second time that she's won it. She won it in Glendale, California, when they won in 2019, and they both had really fabulous, a fabulous tournament between them. So a shout out to them. And they finished the tournament in Dubai, which was towards the end of last year, in 7th place. So the women now are showing constant evolution on the world stage, ranked now 4th overall with just 2 events to go. And they're undefeated in every game that they contested, defeating rivals Canada, Poland. That was their first game. They beat Poland, and then England, France, and Russia for the first gold medal since that tournament in Glendale. And this was the 3rd tournament in the 2021-22 HSBC World Rugby Sevens Series. Their next stop is Seville in Spain for the next tournament this coming weekend. So we'll be watching closely to see if they can take that kind of form and take it to Seville and win again, because that will have given them tremendous confidence. So good luck to them. And that they're making headlines. They're going to be our featured story here on the news desk this week. Well, we're moving on now to skiing. As you know, Nancy, I keep an eye on World Cup skiing. And there was a race today in Kronplatz in Italy. You know, they were in the Dolomites this past weekend at Cortina d'Ampezzo, and they stayed in Italy to go to Kronplatz for a giant slalom. Now, Sweden's Sarah Hector, Nancy, you'll remember her name because she's been on cracking form, dominating the giant slalom this season. And she had a second straight win again today. And she said in her post-race interview, she said, I was so surprised when I crossed the finish line because I thought I'd screwed it up a little bit there. And when watching her run, she almost skied off. She only just made a gate. It was really, really close. But she beat Slovakia's queen of slalom, Petra Vlhova, and France's Tessa Wardley. So that was a really, really good win for her. She'll be boosted with confidence going into Beijing for sure because she's been on cracking form. And as I mentioned, the girls were in Cortina d'Ampezzo this past weekend in the Dolomites. And my goodness, it all happened there, Nancy. It was talk about a wild ride this weekend. The queen of downhill, Italy's Sofia Goggia, she captured the crown in Cortina with an absolutely hair-raising run, which even she described as her best ever win and said afterwards it was an incredible run, but a bit at the limit with some strange lines. And if you watch that, Nancy, you will wonder how on earth she got down that hill to win. It was pretty hairy. You know, I don't know if you watch, I know you watch a bit of the skiing, but Sophia has always been all or nothing. She's a bit like her mentor and friend, Lindsey Vonn, you know, the American skier who's now retired. Just throws everything down that hill. So, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But she did win that downhill on the Saturday, and she beat the Austrian Ramona Siebenhofer, who's also on very good form this season, ahead of Esther Ledecker. Now, in the Super G, the day after, the Italian Elena Cotone is also on very good form. She beat the Austrian Tamara Tippler with the Swiss girl Michelle Gizon in third place. But Sophia, I'm afraid, suffered what the Italian commentator called a bruttissima caduta, which is a ugly fall in the Super G, which resulted, and wait for this, Nancy, it resulted in a sprained left knee with a partial cruciate ligament injury, which was already operated on in 2013, a small fracture of the fibula, and a muscular tendon injury. Now, she had crashed 2 weekends in a row, the week before in Salkensee, which left her unable to walk the next day, and now this week's horrible fall, but that's not stopped her. She's undergoing rehab, and she plans to be in Beijing as we speak, because she's also meant to be the flag bearer at the opening ceremony. Now, I'm going to put a link to that fall, and I don't like to capture falls necessarily, but I think in the context of Sophia saying that she's going to be aiming to be in Beijing to defend her downhill title, as she is the Olympic champion, is extraordinary when you see the fall. Nancy Tuxville almost did the splits. It was really, really, really scary. So, I don't know. I'll put the link in. Maybe you'd like to see that so that you can appreciate when she gets to Beijing.
I mean, the list of injuries alone, I think even without having to see it, that's like the, ligament and muscle damage, that's can take quite a while to recover from. So yeah, I really hope she does make it to Beijing, and it would be incredible if she does and manages to medal. But that sounds quite extensive injury list. Well,
I hope she does, and I hope she's able to get through the Olympics without doing any more damage. That's the problem, because it's a partial cruciate ligament tear. As obviously the sprain is bad enough, but that she has a fracture of the fibula, one of the shin bones, as well as the muscle tendon injury. Some of that soft tissue often takes longer to heal than breaking a bone, doesn't it? But she's really put through it. But she's made of something special, is Sophia, and she certainly is not short of courage, that's for sure. So good luck to her with her rehab, and we'll wait to see if she makes it to Beijing. Now, one skier who's not going to make it, which is a great shame, because Breezy Johnson has been on really, really good form this year in the downhill, the American skier. But she reported that she had a knee injury a couple of weeks ago. So she sat out a couple of races and in the hope that she would make it to Beijing. But she announced today that she's not going to be able to make it with the injury that she has. So good luck to her with her rehab, and hopefully she'll be back for the remainder of the World Cup season. But this puts the standings, which is interesting, because Michaela Shiffrin is still leading the overall standings ahead of Petra Vlhova and then Sofia Goggia. In the downhill, Sofia, of course, tops the standings there with Ramona Siebenhofer in second and Breezy Johnson in third. Now, in the slalom, it's Petra, Michaela, and then Wendy Holder, the Swiss skier. In giant slalom, Sarah Hector, Tessa Wardley, and Michaela. And then the Super G queen is Federica Brignoni, the Italian, behind with Elena Cotoni, her co-teammate. Elena Cotoni, she's in second place, and Sofia in third. So it's Italians 1, 2, 3 in the Super G standings right now. And there's a little bit of favoritism here, but Lara Gutbarami, the Swiss skier, she's currently in fourth place in the Super G standings. And I hope she gets back on form. She just didn't seem to go well in Cortina. It finished in the top 10, but it wasn't to be. She wasn't to make it onto the podium there. But hopefully she'll find the form, and it will be all down to whether Sofia Goggia makes it to the downhill, because I think that will be the decider. We'll see. If she doesn't, then of course it opens it up for. And with Breezy gone as well, it will open it up for Lara and the others, of course, and Ramona Siebenhofer. So it's going to be very, very exciting skiing there in the Olympics. Nancy, will you get to watch any of that, do you know, from Beijing?
I think it is on something like Eurosport. But similar to the Tokyo Olympics, I don't think there's... the BBC obviously normally do a lot of the Olympic stuff, but I don't think they've got much of the live coverage of the games. So I think it's going to be a lot of kind of like highlight packages and stuff. But yeah, obviously any opportunity that I can, I will be either watching or catching up on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't forget, if you are a skiing fan, you can follow FIS, if that's the federation, FIS Alpine on YouTube, because they do highlights clips. They usually do the top three, the podium placings from each race, and then the fall that Sofia Goggia has, anything standout like that, somebody manages to capture it. You know, you're never far from a camera these days, are you, Nancy?
No, I mean, yeah, that's the probably awful thing about this. She's going to be able to watch that full again and again.
Well, we're going to move on to the rest of the sport now. We've got netball, we've got tennis, we've got football, as well as some other sports to cover. So why don't we start with netball, Nancy, because we mentioned this on last week's episode, didn't we?
We did, yeah. And I think when we last spoke about it, it was just before the final of the Netball Quad Series. So that was a 4-team tournament between England, Australia, New Zealand, and then the last team is evading me, but it was either Jamaica or South Africa. I think it was South Africa. And yeah, so the final was England versus Australia. And the two teams had actually played each other just a few days before. But as the two best teams, they were playing each other again. So the first match had ended a draw. But the second match, Australia won 58-46. So actually had kind of pulled ahead in that match quite significantly. I don't think this is kind of massively negative for England. I think in the context of things, Australia didn't win the last Netball World Cup, but have been the dominant force in netball basically forever. England did beat Australia in the Commonwealth Games final in 2018 and will kind of be aiming towards doing the same thing or defending their title up in Birmingham for the 2022 Commonwealth Games this summer. So I think potentially, they'll be quite disappointed with this loss. Because if they're seeing it as a dress rehearsal for an encounter at the Commonwealth Games, it's not great that they did lose. But at the same time, I think when top teams play each other a lot and get familiar with each other, that's, you learn a lot of lessons about each other. So it kind of, I think, makes it more likely for the underdog to beat the better team because they learn like how certain players play on the court and stuff like that. They, learn little kind of details about the team. So, an interesting one there. It was held at the Copper Box Arena in London, which is on the Olympic Park, but it seemed to have pretty good attendances. Seemed to be quite packed out for all of the matches. So hopefully that's a good sign for the Commonwealth Games as well. And the netball matches during that tournament will also have a really good audience.
That's going to be incredibly competitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
When the Diamonds come over to England, it's like in cricket, this friendly rivalry. Well, I'm not always so friendly, but, cricket, netball, those games traditionally between the Commonwealth countries, they have that added excitement, don't they, when they meet. Wherever they meet, whether they meet in the northern or southern hemisphere. But we're going to stay in the southern hemisphere now for a roundup of the Australian Tennis Open there in Melbourne, because lots happened in this first week since we last spoke. Nancy, do you want to bring us up to date with what's happening? Who's getting through to those final rounds?
Yeah, sure. So we're currently at the quarterfinal stage. So like you said, a lot of matches have happened, a lot of upsets, a lot of kind of nice stories emerging as well. But we had the first two quarterfinals take place today. Unsurprisingly, Ashley Barty just looks absolutely incredible. I think the majority of people were tipping her to win the tournament before it started. She's just been on brilliant form. She has the home advantage. And she still hasn't dropped a set. So she beat Jessica Pegula, the American tennis player, today, 6-2, 6-love, which in a quarterfinal that's normally you're getting to, and Pegula is a really good tennis player, but to be winning, only dropping 2 games essentially in the quarterfinal stages is very, very impressive. So she's looking in very good form. The other quarterfinal, Madison Keys, another American player, beat Barbara Krejcikova, who is higher in the rankings. So that was technically an upset, but Madison Keys has again been quite impressive in the tournament so far. So she won that match 6-3, 6-2. And then we've got 2 more quarterfinals tomorrow. Danielle Collins, there were 3 American players in the quarterfinals. She's playing Elise Cornet, that was one of the nice stories that emerged from the tournament. She reached her first quarterfinal of a Grand Slam on her 60th attempt, which is just that's just incredible perseverance. I think, because I wrote something on it, her first Grand Slam was when she was 15 years old. And she's played in every single Grand Slam since, but has never made it past the 4th round. And then finally, she beat Simona Halep earlier this week to reach the quarterfinal. So that's a really nice story there. And then the second quarterfinal of the day will be Iga Swiatek versus Kaia Kanepi, the Estonian player who upset Sabalenka, the second seed, in the 4th round. You may notice the defending champion Naomi Osaka isn't there. She was upset by Amanda Anisimova, the young American tennis player, who then subsequently lost to Barty, but that was probably one of the upsets of the tournament as well. Emma Raducanu, from a British perspective, obviously everyone was following her. She went out in the second round to Konovic, a player from Montenegro, but it was I don't know if you watched any of it, Chris, but she developed a really, really painful blister on her hand.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, she couldn't. She was just kind of having to resort to kind of slicing it, and she couldn't really hit the ball properly. But still somehow managed to take it to 3 sets, and it was very, very close. So I think she'd be disappointed, but it's actually, she spoke about it after, it's actually one of those injuries where, the blister, it was more a factor of kind of inexperience. It was something that she probably could have dealt with. It wasn't just a freak thing. It was the fact that she wasn't used to playing in the heat and humidity of Melbourne. She had that period in isolation, so she'd kind of been away from tennis for a little bit, and she's just not as used to those high intensity games that she is playing quite a lot now. So it's just one of those things I think that comes with playing more regularly on the WTA tour. So I'm sure won't be a recurring problem. But for her at this stage, every match is a lesson learned, isn't it?
It really is. And I think this year there's going to be lots of that, lots of lessons to learn for her. And, a consolidating year. I said this before, I'm not expecting great things of her this year, but hoping that, she will just build up the experience and just get the match play so that, she continues to grow as a player. So, yeah, well, I hope she's not too disillusioned by that. So, Nancy, I was surprised we had, 3 tennis players announcing their retirement already during the first week of the Australian Open?
Yeah, I mean, it's already quite a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think, 2 quite noticeable ones. I know Sania Mirza. I don't think she's the most well-known tennis player kind of around the world, but I know she's one of the most famous female athletes from India. Like one of the most followed on Instagram and stuff like that. So she announced her retirement, and I think she kind of attributed it to her 3-year-old son, didn't she? Because she didn't really want to be traveling so much with him. But I did, interestingly, actually, when I was kind of doing a bit of research on her, I saw that she actually felt that she might have announced it too soon. Not in terms of not wanting to retire, but more because now it's the only thing that people are talking to her about and asking her. So that's quite a funny, I suppose that must happen quite a lot when you announce your retirement and everyone probably wants to know what you're doing next.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's one veteran that did make the news because she's been on the circuit for such a long time, and that's Sam Stosur.
Yeah, so yet again, another player to retire. So she exited the Australian Open after her second round match at the Australian Open, and she actually broke the news during the post-match interview, which is quite a rare way of doing it, because I think some people kind of have the idea in their head about when they're going to go and kind of announce it beforehand, but obviously at that point she decided she wanted to go. I think so. Again, she is actually a Grand Slam winner. She won the US Open in 2011 and had a career high ranking of number 4 in the singles rankings as well. So it will be sad to see her go.
And it will be sad to see her go, but one real upset, I think, of in terms of players having to retire early is the American girl, Catherine, or Cece as she's known, Cece Bellis. She's only 22, and she's just been battling so many injuries that she just doesn't see a way forward. So it's very sad because she's highly regarded as being a tennis prodigy. Yeah.
So, like you said, Cece Bellis. I think it's quite surprising just purely because of her age. She's only 22 years old. And she announced that she's been struggling with an arm injury. And last year she saw little to no improvement with her arm. She's been in the same cycle of rehab training and injuries for 3+ years, and mentally and physically she just couldn't do it anymore. So has retired. I think it must be really, really sad to retire at such a young age and kind of not really being able to fulfill that promise you have. But she said she's now pursuing a business finance degree and will be pursuing an MBA as well. So at least, she's got her plans afterwards. But yeah, that's quite shocking news.
Well, one thing that has been, good news coming out of this, can talk about diversity across the sport and access and opportunity within tennis. We've seen history being made by 2 countries, Kenya and Iran, in the Australian Open. Now, I'm going to let you pronounce their names.
So, Meshkatol Zara Zafi from Iran and Angela Okutoyi from Kenya. They've both made history in the juniors tournament of the Australian Open. So Safi became the first Iranian to win a match at a girls' event at a Grand Slam. And then Okutoyi became the first Kenyan girl to win a Grand Slam juniors match. And they were both congratulated by Billie Jean King of all people. So I think, you've recorded quite a good achievement there. When you're congratulated by Billie Jean King. But Okutoyi, as I saw today, she's now reached, I think, the 4th round and has, I think, now got the furthest in a Grand Slam, senior and junior, of any other Kenyan tennis player, which is a remarkable achievement. And yeah, playing in the juniors tournament, that's kind of a really good sign for the future, that hopefully she'll also make that step into the senior stage as well and have a successful career. So yeah, I'm interested. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing how far she can go in the juniors tournament this year.
Yeah, good for them. All right, we're going to move on to motor racing now, and it's a familiar name on this show is Jamie Chadwick.
Yeah, and I mean, we always talk about her because she's just constantly making history, isn't she? But she's going to become the first woman since Susie Wolff, who was the last woman to feature in F1. So yeah, the first woman since Susie Wolff to compete at the Race of Champions. So she'll be competing alongside David Coulthard, the F1 legend, in the Race of Champions Nations Cup in Sweden. So the pair will compete for Britain against other nations. So that will be taking place next month. And yeah, like I said, she is just constantly making history. I mean, if you don't know Jamie Chadwick, she's the back-to-back W Series champion, and I think it's kind of being touted as if any woman is going to be racing in F1 anytime soon, it will probably be her. So yeah, if you don't really know too much about her, it's definitely worth a research.
Yeah, for sure. A story out of making history in for this Winter Olympics coming up. What's that about? About from Team USA? Yeah,
it is Team USA. So the US Olympic team, as we said, the Beijing Olympics are just around the corner, so everyone's announcing their teams. So US Olympic team is sending 222 athletes, 800 of which are women. And this is set to be the most women competing for any nation in the history of the Winter Olympics. So it's pretty impressive. It's also going to be the 11th consecutive games that the US will tie or break the record for the most women competing at a Winter Olympics for a single nation. And that streak began in 1984. So it's been rapidly increasing since then. I think just in general, the Olympics is going to have a very high female participation rate, and there's only one sport now that doesn't have a women's event, which is Nordic combined. So it's slow. Well, it's kind of getting similar to how the Summer Games, it has now essentially reached equality in terms of the amount of women participating. It seems like the Winter Olympics isn't too far behind.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Awesome. Okay, one more story before we get to football, and that's about a hijab ban for sportswomen in France. What's that about, Nancy?
Yeah, so this is a bit of kind of sad news, really, from coming out of France. So the French government have voted to ban the hijab in sport, which obviously affects women, really. So it means that, essentially if you want to take place in any sport, you're not allowed to wear a hijab, which obviously excludes a massive group of Muslim women. It's just obviously not great. I think there's been times before where, say, FIFA have banned the hijab. I think it was from 2007 to 2014. On the grounds of health and safety, but there's not actually any evidence that the hijab is a danger to anyone else or is going to, harm anyone, or that a player could be strangled by it. And it's actually shown in the Women's Asian Cup, the football tournament. Iran are currently playing in that tournament with the majority of players wearing hijabs. So it shows that it's completely possible to be done. It's also interesting as well because France is obviously going to host the Olympics in 2024. We've seen in Tokyo and previous Olympics that some athletes do compete in a hijab, and that's not been an issue. So what are France going to do at that point when, you've got the biggest sporting event in the world? You can't discriminate against the athletes coming because they want to express, their religion through their clothing. And I think essentially that is kind of what this comes down to. And we discussed it when kind of quite a few months ago when we were talking about the Norwegian women's beach handball team when they just wanted to wear baggier shorts and they were fined for wearing baggy shorts instead of the tight shorts that they had to wear. Like, it essentially comes down to choice of the athletes choosing what they want to wear, whether that's just personal choice because they feel more comfortable in it or if it is a religious choice. And essentially taking away that choice just excludes a whole group of women from taking part in sport, which is the opposite of what we're all working towards. So I'm not an expert on the ins and outs of this law, but I think there is potential in the coming weeks for the politicians in France to vote against it or something like that. So I'm hoping that this, it can be overturned soon, or it's not going to be like a long-lasting ban. I think the Olympics only being 2 years away now is surely going to put that law under a lot of scrutiny.
Yes, it has to, doesn't it? All right, well, we'll follow that here, as always, at withsports.com. You can find all the stories and the links online. And also let us know what you think about these stories and what we're missing here on the show. Just drop us a line to info@withsports.com or post a comment, of course, on our social media channels. Well, we've got a bit of football news to round up this week's show, Nancy. And let's start with Sam Kerr making history.
Yeah, so, Sam Kerr is already a very prolific goal scorer. She's been top scorer in the WSL, NWSL, and the W League in Australia as well. But yeah, she's broken the record now for her national team, becoming Australia's all-time top goal scorer for both men and women's football. So she's been playing for Australia in the Women's Asian Cup. And yeah, Australia beat Indonesia 18-0, which was it was a big victory, but I don't think much to celebrate, because when you get big wins like that, it's always just kind of a sign that a team isn't receiving the resources it deserves, essentially. But it was a good day for Kerr. She scored 5 goals. This took her all-time top goal scoring tally to 54, beating Tim Cahill's record of 50 goals. And I know since that match, which was at the start of it was probably about a week ago, or kind of 5 days ago now. She has scored in other matches since. And she is, she's got a lot of years left of her career. And I can imagine that by the time she finally retires, in quite a few years' time, she's going to firmly have that record, because she scores for fun.
Yes, she certainly does. All right, and a shout out to the American player Tobin Heath, who plays for your team, Arsenal, because she came off the bench after a long break with injury. We wonder when she was going to come back, hoping she was going to come back before the end of the season, which she did. She came back with a vengeance and actually saved your bacon with the equaliser against Manchester City right in the dying moments of the game.
Yeah, she did. So it was quite a crucial game, because Arsenal were top of the table. Man City had a really, really poor run of form at the first half of the season, but they're kind of getting back into their groove now. They're racking up quite a few wins, and I don't think they'll be going for the title, but definitely for the top 3. But it was a bit of a frustrating game, because the Manchester City goal was the result of a bit of a dodgy refereeing decision. So I think it was a big relief to have that last minute equaliser, because I don't think Arsenal deserved to lose. And it was great just to see Tobin come back, because like you said, she's been out for so long, and we were wondering, are we going to see her in an Arsenal shirt again? Because no one's quite sure how long her contract is. But yeah, it's great to see her back. It's basically like having a new player, isn't it? And she did have an immediate impact.
Yeah, good for her. Congratulations to Tobin. All right, well, back over on this side of the pond, the NWSL preseason starts next week. That's on February the 1st. But meanwhile, the US women's national team will play its first matches of the year in February at the 2022 She Believes Cup. Now, the USA will open that tournament on February the 17th against the Czech Republic, and that's going to be take place in Carson, California, where they'll also play their second match on February 20th. And that time they're going to be playing the co-hosts of the 2023 World Cup. That, of course, is New Zealand. And from there, the teams will travel over to Texas, and in Frisco, they're going to be playing against Iceland. And they're, of course, they have all their eyes set on winning that She Believes Cup trophy for a third consecutive year. And following the She Believes Cup, the USA then is scheduled to play 2 friendlies in April and 2 in June, leaned into the CONCACAF W Championship in July. So that's what it looks like for the US women's national team this season. It all begins in just a few weeks here, and we'll be following it, of course, and you can watch a lot of it on TV over here in the States. Probably a bit more difficult for you to watch it over there, Nancy, but you've got something called the Arnold Clark Cup that's instead of the She Believes Cup, because the actually England pulled out of the She Believes Cup, didn't they? Yeah,
so we are now hosting the lovely named Arnold Clark Cup. If anyone doesn't know, it's like a car selling company in England. But yeah, just a bit of a strange name. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I'm very excited about this tournament because it's going to be a real test ahead of the Euros. It's going to be a good chance to see where England are actually at, because a lot of the teams we've been playing haven't been, no disrespect to them, but kind of not the strongest opponents. But yeah, so it's Germany, Canada and Spain in the Arnold Clark Cup. And it's taking place late February, so around the same time as She Believes as well, during that international break. So yeah, I'm really hopefully the matches are taking place in quite not random places, but it's Wolverhampton, Norwich and Middlesbrough. I'm hoping to go to the England-Spain game in Norwich. And yeah, it should be a really good tournament.
That's some really odd venues, isn't it? I mean, you know, all in furthest reaches of England, you know.
Yeah. Well,
I wonder why they chose those.
I think that's the thinking behind it is there's been a lot of women's football, or say there's WSL teams in the more central areas of England, and like ahead of the Euros, I think drumming up interest in the areas that maybe people haven't managed to, they don't have a local WSL team, or they haven't really had any women's football games happen nearby at all. Like having that big tournament there will hopefully encourage a new audience to go to matches and in time for the Euros in the summer as well. So I think that's why I think they've done it. But for me, it's hard to get to all 3 of those locations. Norwich is probably the closest, so going to give that one a go.
Give it a go. All right, Nancy. Well, you'll have to report back when they take place. We'll have more football, of course, next week for you as the NWSL season begins here, the pre-season, and the Olympic Games. That's starting right next week. So do join us here on the WISP News Desk. Every week, Nancy and I will bring you a roundup of what's happening in the world of women's sports. Don't forget to follow us on social media at WISP Sports. And Nancy, they can follow you where?
I'm at Nancy_Gillen on Twitter, and my Instagram handle is NancyGillen_sport. And follow at Give Me Sport W to keep up with all the news that's happening in women's sport as well.
And if you're on your podcast app and have a moment to give us a rating or a review, that always helps others find the show. So we would very much welcome that. As always, post your comments, questions and suggestions on our social media at WISP Sports. So until next week, thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.